Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
Well, 10 and a half, nearly 11 years was a good run, but I think today is the day this podcast folds because we have Max Bultman from The Athletic Detroit on the show, another Good in the Room episode, so we're remote. And Brad is here as well. Brad just was stuck in an unholy amount of traffic. And between getting Max to, fix some wobbling noise in the background and giving it to Brad for not driving through traffic, half of this call wants to murder me right now. And I just don't know. I don't know that we're going to survive the whole episode, honestly.
Yeah, but the question is Evan and which of the other of us?
I don't know that Evan has the strength to kill another human being right now. I think his life force is being sapped by the infant running his hours. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe one day I'll get back to my vengeful self, but for now I'm tapped out.
You'll have to team up with Brad, Max. Loath though I know you are to do it. All right. The Red Wings saved the vibes of this episode a little bit. We got, a 1-on-1 performance over the last two games, which is good because they kind of repeated the last performance with the New York Islanders again, who for some reason have their number this year. And there's a ton to talk about, individual players like DeBrincat to Sandin-Pellikka. We have Gustafsson being called up, Soderblom on IR. The goaltending conversation rages on as there's a wide disparity between Talbot and Gibson. So let's jump into that. Folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
I'm Max Bultman.
And I'm Evan.
This episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast is brought to you by Greenlight Lending. If you currently own a home and need to save on the monthly payment, or if you're considering buying a home and don't know where to start, reach out to fellow listener and friend of the podcast, Nick with Greenlight Lending. They offer no closing cost options and a range of unique products to help you in any situation. NMLS 2676683, an equal opportunity lender licensed in Michigan and Virginia. Give Nick a call at 586-321-1888. On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we are going to be doing game recaps for the very different results, the Islanders game and the Columbus Blue Jackets game. We're going to be talking about individual storylines, some notes on Sandin-Pellikka, Alex DeBrincat, and more. And then we're going to be getting into the goalie conversation. John Gibson Cam Talbot performing much differently right now, and whether it's time to give Sebastian Cossa a look. There is more from the world of the Red Wings, possible trade targets, and news across the NHL, and whatever else we get into before overtime. Very quickly, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to support the show, go above and beyond, and get access to benefits like our bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones. We let loose, we have fun. You get thoughts with Evan and thoughts with Max on these episodes. You also get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord, and you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. For example, we give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game going directly to our Patreon supporters. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Brad, do you remember over the past however many years where the Islanders were like the ultimate, this is boring, low event hockey, and between the rebuilding Red Wings and the New York Islanders always being boring? Like, we would always just say, we can't stand these games. They're the worst games to watch. How stupid were we tempting fate like that? Because look what's happened now.
Didn't think they could get worse, but here we are. At least it gives us something to talk about if you're looking for a silver lining. Every other Red Wings Islanders game, we would hop on the next episode and have some version of, they took the ice and then the game ended. And almost nothing happened in between those two things, so we were just scraping the bottom for content. At least, although it was a dumpster fire, we have a dumpster fire to talk about. So, silver lining, I guess.
5-0. After a 7-2 loss the previous time they played. Being outscored 12-2 against the New York Islanders is the ultimate monkey paw curling. And man, is it rough to watch these kinds of games this year. We've talked about why it happens with the inexperience and the team playing different based on the goaltender that's behind them seemingly, and not always knowing how to get back in it. But it's rough to watch these games kind of get away from them fast. The Islanders win 5-0. There's almost nothing to be said positively for the Red Wings. There's criticisms of goaltending, there's criticisms of defense, there's criticisms of motivation and the ability to work around a team that's just really clogging up, Detroit's play style. But all in all, Detroit wasn't close at all that game. So why does that keep happening against the Islanders? And why does it seem like feast or famine for the Red Wings when they win or lose?
Both good questions. Let's start with what happened against the Islanders. I think in general, aside from their first few shifts, I actually, this will be a theme of the episode, that they came out pretty good. And then it just kind of went away, and it was flat and it was slow. And I think the things that McLellan was most bothered by were more like execution things and focus things. There's a couple goals off faceoffs. One of the rush goals was off a Red Wings turnover. Ben Chiarot gets caught chasing a big hit at the blue line. Like, these are all things that you look at on film and you can point to something and go, this was not necessary to do, or this was avoidable, or whatever. And so I think that's what he was most bothered by after the game. As for the Islanders, I don't know that there's necessarily a commonality to it. I mean, they have some good, exciting young players, or really an exciting young player and some exciting older players. Bo Horvat's playing great hockey. Matt Barzal's always dangerous. Shabunov had a really nice game. Matthew Schaefer is kind of the fun story there. So maybe they're more equipped now to take advantage of transition opportunities than they were in the era that you opened the episode talking about, right? Like, I think this is a different Islander identity now than that team was. But I mostly think this was a Red Wings story on Thursday night. Like, I thought that was a game that they just didn't look present for, focused in. And it wasn't like they didn't show up for the game, because I thought, again, their first 2 or 3 shifts, pretty good. It looked like, okay, this is a team that wants, they came into that game with a pretty good track record against teams they had seen already this season. And it looked like that was going to continue. And then very quickly it went awry, and it went way awry.
I think this game just is another example of the consistency issues that seem to plague this team, not even from game to game. Sometimes it's period to period. And yeah, Max put it perfectly, because we know the skill level of this team. We know their strengths. We know the limitations. We know when everything's firing, how this team is going to win. And there's only so many ways they can do that. But this iteration of whatever the heck you want to call it is a little too consistent. It's crazy, and I understand there's going to be people listening to us whine and moan and go, they're in first place. How? This is a tight division. They're one bad week away from being out of the playoffs again. And yes, we should enjoy that they're in first place. But I'm at the point where I'm more than a little concerned that keeps happening. Because on the one hand, the coach gives them a kick in the ass and they respond well. But the fact that he has to do it almost every week is a problem. And even more to the point where Max was talking about, they started the game really well, which would lead me to believe whatever McLellan does pregame to get them going, or whatever the leadership group does to get them going, worked. They were out there ready to go. They were firing. And then, focus is probably the right word, goes out the window, and they circle back to these mistakes. And on a young team, those are expected. We talked about it at the beginning of the year, and we've talked about it throughout the year. When you have 3 rookies and a good chunk of the important players on your team are under 25, you are going to get inconsistency. This is where the 30-plus guys are supposed to come in and help settle that, and they've arguably been a bigger part of that problem. So I don't know what the fix is. I don't know why this keeps happening, but it's a theme at this point, and it's a concerning theme.
Yeah, it's almost developed a pattern where, in an NHL season, you're going to play somewhere between 2 to 4 games a week. So let's say 3. 2 of those 3, they're looking like the improved team that is taking the steps that I think we all, to some degree, either forecasted or talked about, like, this is what it would need to look like. They look like that team. The other game that week is bad enough typically to make you go, am I crazy for seeing what I thought I saw the last 2 games out, kind of thing? And like, the good news is you'd prefer that ratio than the other way around. But the bad news is something that JT Compher, I think, alluded to in his post-game press conference, which was like, look, it's possible you're going to lose games in the NHL. You're going to lose a good number of games. The best teams in the league are still going to lose 20 to 25 games in the NHL. And playoff teams are still going to lose like 30-plus games. But it's possible to lose those games and not get blown off the ice. And it too often, like how many Red Wings losses have there even been this year where there wasn't, they go to overtime with Buffalo. They didn't get blown off the ice. I think that was their most calamitous loss of the year, right? So it's like, there's a dynamic that I try to avoid. And I read this, I wish I could credit the person who said this, but they pointed it out about baseball teams, right? And you go into a year and you kind of know that the baseball team you root for is like a 500 team. And so you should be prepared for win one, lose one, win one, lose one. It's just kind of going to go on like that. Win two, lose two, whatever. But fan reaction tends to be the sky is falling after a loss and everything's amazing after a win. I really try to avoid that style of coverage. But a lot of their losses have been kind of sky is falling losses, and it makes it hard to know what to make of it, because it's not like they're losing a hard-fought 2-1 game or 3-2 game in some of these cases. They're either blowing a huge lead or getting kind of blown off the ice. And the good news, again, is that that's not happening every night. That's not even happening half the nights. But it seems like it's almost every time they lose, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that last point, because as we focus on, what message we're putting out on this podcast, we always want to be first and foremost like real and raw and like genuine, but at the same time, you take the emotion and you make sure that it's injected in there so you get those things, but you don't overdo it to the point where, the sky is falling after each loss. Some episodes we're going to be covering multiple losses, but that doesn't mean the whole season's over. And it's like swimming against the current, because like so many of these losses are like, this isn't a routine loss. There's very few so far losses where in the game recap I'm writing, you're not going to win them all. This is just one that didn't go their way. Like, there's multiple games against Buffalo, multiple games against the Islanders. That's 4 right there where you're like, there is something here that you need to nip in the bud to some degree, because you can't be playing like that in game 60, 65, 80, or if you're lucky, beyond game 82. Do you know the clip from Paul Maurice? It's very popular from one of the Florida Cup runs where he's like, finish your checks. You go and you finish their checks and you bang the bodies now so they have nothing left in the tank in game 7. Like, I love that clip because it is so good, and it's a great way to demonstrate the attrition and the grind of a 16-win Stanley Cup performance. But at the same time, it holds true to some degree in the season. You have to go out there and play, no one's going to give 110 over all 82 games, right? Like, you're never just going to get that out of these guys. It's not the way the league works, but you can't give up on games, because what you do is going to be reflected in your following performances. And it's hard to come back from being discombobulated and out of sorts and not caring and then just turning it on just because it's the first period of the next game, the next night or 2 nights from then. Like, they need to find a way to start to play well, even if they think in their heart of hearts and they know for sure they're going to lose. It's a basic concept, but that's what a big aspect of what they're missing is, I think.
Right. Like, you go back and you look through them, right? So they lose that disaster on opening night. And that's like, okay, so that's obviously a story. Then you drop the one in Buffalo, and it's like, okay, that game was like close. Like, it was a 4-2 final, I think. But you shouldn't really be losing to Buffalo, at least certainly the way they had been playing. And I don't think that in the manner they lost to Buffalo, they were kind of flat-footed. You go and get shellacked by the Islanders. The one loss that I could think of that I was like, you know what? This is just like water under the bridge. That's the Vegas loss, right? Go into Vegas, lose 1-0 at the end of a road trip. I know that McLellan didn't want them to like have that kind of attitude for it, but I thought they played a perfectly good game, and Vegas just shut them down. The Rangers and Blackhawks games, like the Blackhawks game, I thought they played fairly well. They outshot them like 40-something to 18, but it was all from the outside. And the Rangers game, they didn't generate anything. So even though I don't know that I would say those were like, terrible losses or they played horrible, there's like a clear thing that's like, this is an issue. And it was the manner that they're generating their offense. They go to work, they come back out in the Anaheim game, and they show a completely different look in how they're generating offense. You're like, there it is. That's what you need to do. And then the Buffalo game starts, the next game, and they jump out to a big lead, but then it looks like they completely abandon that lesson and start trying to skill it up a little bit. And so, look, there's ebbs and flows. I'm not trying to make too much of this. Like, this is kind of how a season goes, is there's going to, some part of your game's going to be quiet for a while, and then you turn it on, and then it's kind of whack-a-mole, right? Like, there's always something to address. It's just I think as an observer, you want to see the lessons learned last a little longer before you got to relearn them, and you want to see it a little more time before the next thing pops up. But that's the season.
I went and looked it up because I was curious for anybody wondering about the stats of it. 7 of the 9 Red Wings losses has been by 3+ goals or blowing a 3-goal lead. 7 of the 9. Like, it's not a small theme. It is very predominant.
New trick. Don't go down by 3. Sure, that's obvious. Don't go up by 3 either. You win by 2 or you win in overtime.
One of the things that makes it more dramatic, or makes people more dramatic about it, is the fact that the Atlantic is so tight right now. Like Brad mentioned earlier, like every win and every loss like catapults you up and down the standings. And it's probably not a healthy way to live, but we're all Red Wings fans. That's what we're gonna do. And one bad week will put you in the basement, or one good week will catapult you away from the rest of the pack. So yeah, every win and every loss feels like it's way more than what it actually is in an 82-game season.
Now, the good news is the following a game against the Blue Jackets, a Saturday matinee, recipe for failure in the past. The Saturday matinee games seem to be slow starts and, maybe a little sleepy against a team that people think should be an automatic win like Columbus. But Detroit didn't have a perfect game. Far from it. I don't think it was pretty. A lot went against them. I thought that refereeing was particularly atrocious. I don't get the call on Kane for the, embellishment. That was pretty ridiculous in my mind. You could see from Kane's reaction. I think the officiating in general was poor, but also that goalie interference call, to me, I didn't quite agree with. I understand the gray area, but, there was a call tonight, I think it was like Carolina game or something, where the same standard wasn't applied with, the crease and not the crease. Anyways, Detroit had a lot working against them, and they gutted out that win. They came back from down 3-1 in the third period, and they won in overtime. And that was, I call it gutsy because did they deserve it on paper? You wouldn't have an easy time arguing that, but they still secured the 2 points, and that was much more the kind of performance that I know this team can put on when the odds are stacked against them.
It's funny you say that. I thought they totally did. Like, Comfer said that line about like sometimes you play really well in this league and you lose. And after the first period, I was like, yep, well, here comes that, because I thought the first 10 to 12 minutes of that game was, they were all over Columbus. Shots were like 10-3 at one point. Like, they were all over them. And they take the 2 penalties in quick succession. Was it Fantilli, whoever scored on the 5-on-3? And I was like, okay, so this is going to be the story of this game. And then they come out and they tie it up right out of the break and they give it right back. And I'm like, yeah, no, this is exactly what I'm watching play out. When the 3-1 goal goes in my mind, it's like, all right, well, I guess that's my story is, they lost again, but I thought they were better tonight. And then they just come back and win the game. And it's completely what you said, Ryan, is it's like you snatch it. And I agree with you about the officiating. Like I tend to kind of feel like people are too hard on the officials because people watch the games with so much benefit of replay that I just don't know that you can really express to people how much different it looks like live, even from my perch, which I think I have a great perch from up top, seeing how things develop. And I don't always have the replays with me, and people will scream at me like, how could you not see that this puck deflected off this guy? It's like, because I'm watching it live and not with 6 screens kind of going or whatever, or not 6 screens, but 6 angles of this replay. And even that, like, I couldn't believe they called the embellishment on Kane. If anything, just don't call either. If you feel like you need to, manage the game, or then just the pick play I thought was there, but it wasn't indefensible. You could argue that that's just a routine collision. There's no embellishment on that play. That's Kane being 175 pounds.
I've seen a little bit more embellishment called across the league, and I've seen obviously a little bit more called against the Red Wings. I have nothing to go on this, like this is pure speculation, but I wonder if there isn't either a league-wide directive to say, hey, we need to crack down on this. We don't like how much we've seen, which as from a neutral hockey fan perspective, I like. I can't stand diving and embellishment in hockey. Or if, there aren't some reputations being earned across the league and referees are focusing in a little bit more. The way
like
I would
Seider
handle
got one. Like, there's no chance Seider has a reputation as a diver.
No.
Like, it's the opposite of that.
The way I would have handled that is, you called the penalty. Because I do think that was a pick play, very obviously. If you're going to call the penalty, call that one. And then you go to the bench, between, whistles or during a commercial break, so there's not a whole focus on it. You say, you either talk to Kane or McLellan, say, hey, the league wants us to call things like that embellishment. Just be careful, because next time I'm going to have to call it. Otherwise, I hear from the head ref. That's the end of it, right? I mean, that's a biased take for me, but yeah, that embellishment call was a bit.
I subscribe to the theory that if it is a pick play, the standard for embellishment has to be really high. I don't agree that you can never have embellishment on a legitimate penalty, because you can clearly be like leaning into it more and you want to take that out of the game for sure. But the standard, if you're admitting that it's a penalty, which you are by calling it, the standard for what embellishment has to look like has to be egregious. I didn't see it, and I did look at a replay on this one. I was like, okay, there has to be something that I missed live then. Nothing there. So I didn't get that one at all. And they were taking everybody for everything. Was it 2 or 3 different times in that game that they took both for stuff? And it's like, one of them was a play. I don't even remember who was involved in it. It was at the far end of the ice where the Red Wings shot twice. They weren't even going to call the penalty. And then the Blue Jackets guy was like throwing some extra punches. And they called, was it Comfer or somebody? They took somebody for like a hit that they weren't calling a penalty until they decided to call the other guy. And at that point, I just don't know what I know literally what you're doing. You're managing the game. I just think that's a little far. But I do tend to have a lot of sympathy for the officials. That's an aspect of it that I don't really like.
So, like Max mentioned, Fantilli scored on a 5-on-3. The Red Wings were already on a penalty kill with more than 90 seconds left, and a puck was rolling on Chiarot, and it just popped up on him, and he fired it out of play. It was just one of those plays where you're just like, you tilt your head back like, God, what am I supposed to do about that? Fantilli scores, and they go up 1-0 in the second period. Again, as Max mentioned, Lucas Raymond takes advantage of a puck that hit the official, or hit the referee. It dropped down, and he made a filthy play, just a dangle between the legs, backhand finish. Was it Werenski that he danced around, which was just gorgeous. Lucas Raymond is continuing to be one of the best players in the league right now. You know, Miles Wood scores very shortly after, like a blink of an eye after. I really thought that was going to come back, but again, the goalie interference challenge wasn't successful. Detroit thankfully killed the ensuing penalty. Throughout this entire game, Cam Talbot made colossal saves, like in all alone on a breakaway level saves. And Jet Greaves was excellent too, up until, Detroit really forced the issue. Werenski made it 3-1, and then Ben Chiarot gave Detroit life, where I don't really think they had any momentum at that point, which is why I was kind of like, I thought they were destined to lose. Ben Chiarot slammed home the puck that came loose, Kane and Seider on the assist, and then Mo Seider with a wrister to tie the game from Finney and Danielson. But just before that, Cam Talbot made a massive 10-bell save in all alone on the breakaway, stops it, and the play goes the other way and gives Detroit the opportunity, and they capitalize. So they don't even get to overtime without Cam Talbot that game.
I would love to see those win probability charts, and even that wouldn't fully capture it. But like, if you could have captured the instant that Monahan's going down on that breakaway and see where Columbus is up 3-2 and what the probability of scoring on a breakaway is or whatever, and then into where it was after Seider's goal, that is a massive swing. It was the play of the game by far, and it's a hugely important play, partly because I'm sure we're going to talk about this later in the episode. It's the kind of save the Red Wings haven't really been getting this year, and they get it in that moment, and Seider makes good on it, and that's your game right there. They go win it in overtime, but the game at that point, as far as I'm concerned, you knew where it was going when Talbot made that save and then Seider scores that goal.
Same as when the Buffalo's game went to overtime, you knew where that one was going, just inverted for this one.
Yeah, when he made that save, I felt like Steve Carell in The Office, where I smashed the desk and said, thank you, because we've been beating it to death all year. There have been games where the Red Wings goalies haven't been great, but they haven't been bad. They save the ones they're supposed to. They don't save the ones that you would expect to go in. But on those nights, there was never felt like they were going to steal you a game or make a save in a key spot if you needed it. Obviously, Talbot's been better than Gibson, but overall, it's been the same basic theme. That's not one Cam Talbot should save. Not in that situation, that point of the game. Monahan's a good finisher coming down. I would bet 90% of Red Wings fans when Monahan touched that puck at center ice went, well, that's it. And then he makes a big save on a good shot. He saved one he wasn't supposed to save, and it ended up winning them the game, essentially. And this whole time, if you want to know what we mean, that's what we've been saying all year. Guy puts one bar down blocker side. Okay, it happens. It sucks. Goalie can't stop that. One-timer cross ice. Sucks. Goalie can't stop that. Guy puts a distance shot that the goalie easily catches. Okay, yeah, we know how those ones have been playing out. but just once save the game. And it just felt so refreshing to actually see it happen.
So after that game, Detroit regained, though temporarily, probably the lead of the Atlantic Division. They actually, technically, at the time of recording right now, are still in the lead of the Atlantic with 27 points in 22 games. They're 13-8-1. Their upcoming schedule, they have the Devils on the road Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern, and then back at home against Nashville, 7 p.m. Eastern. And we'll be with you recording bright and early on Thursday. So by Thursday afternoon, you'll have the next episode. But yeah, we talked about it. It's a very tight Atlantic. Like, it's a very tight Eastern Conference. It's so complicated how quickly things can swing. So it's like, yeah, you don't want to not celebrate the fact that they're leading the Atlantic. If you look at our tweets and what we talked about last episode, just the fact that at the quarter pole of the season, they're leading the Atlantic, you have to celebrate that. But Brad's not wrong with what he said earlier. In a week or 2 weeks, you could be at the bottom of this division, not even exaggerating. The Leafs have 21 points in 22 games. They're having a terrible season. They are 5 points out of the lead of the entire division. It is so incredibly tight. So celebrate it while you can, but the fortunes are going to have to be continued to stay atop.
Forget a week, 24 hours. If you go just by points, so you can go all the way down to 11th in the conference to find a team within 2 points of the Red Wings. So literally just a win here and a loss there, and 11th. Now, as happenstance would have it, that right now is Columbus. So big win on Sunday, but you got Columbus, Montreal, Pittsburgh, Philly, all with 25 points. Boston, Ottawa, Tampa, all with 26 points. Like, in a day, it can change dramatically.
And to Brad's point earlier about how lopsided the losses have been, they're the only team currently in the playoff slate in the Eastern Conference with a negative goal differential. So every single one of those teams, they're looking up at the standings going, okay, that's the team that's going to come back to earth. It's up to the Red Wings to prove that that's not the case and obviously get that number righted, right? I mean, it's good that they're winning these tight games. I don't think that's a bad thing, but you're going to have to win a lot more than you lose if you're going to get that number right. The number, I know it's not everything. Montreal managed last year to get by with a pretty ugly goal differential. The long arc of history says your goal differential tells us a lot about who you are.
And I think, as we get through this week, like Saturday, the Red Wings are home to Tampa, and then they're on the road the next day in Boston. Like, those teams are within 1 point of them as of tonight. Like, the season could be materially changing by the end of this week. That's very TBD, but it just goes to show that every conference game, every divisional game is crucially important for this season, especially if the Red Wings want to be a playoff team in some capacity.
So a change that's been made recently, we mentioned that Elmer Soderblom was placed on injured reserve retroactive to, was it 2 weeks ago, just about? And they called up Erik Gustafsson. What do we make of that? And then I think we should also lead into our next point, which is Axel Sandin-Pellikka's play. Is there a point here where you have to have a discussion of, do you give him some time in the press box and or do you give him some time down in Grand Rapids to kind of work on the things that you need him to work on?
Yeah, I think this is a good time for that discussion. I mean, first of all, the Gustafsson recall comes, Edvinsson missed the Columbus game with an illness, right? So that's my first thought about what's going on there is maybe he's not over that illness yet, right? So they're going on the road to New Jersey. They got to travel. Like, that makes all the sense in the world. We talked about the save Talbot made in that Columbus game. I mean, it comes off of a Sandin-Pellikka turnover, stumble at the offensive blue line on the power play. Granted, it was not a great pass to him. I don't think he was put in a great spot to receive it, but you stumble and then it gives up a breakaway on the power play, a shorty that could have ended the game functionally. Another one earlier in the game, he makes an ill-advised pass coming out from behind his own net, turns it over, leads to another Monahan chance that Talbot bails him out on, right? So these are plays that you expect from time to time from a young player, certainly a young defenseman, as young as he is, 20 years old in his first season in North America. It happens. It's happening a little more often than I think you'd like to see right now. And so I do think it's at least a conversation. Remy still gave him 18 minutes in that game. I don't think that this is like necessarily his end of days. I think they've shown that they are willing to work with him. But you talked about the fragility of their position in the standings. Carrying a rookie defenseman and living with the rookie mistakes, like that's something you got to weigh against that. And so I'm not saying that they necessarily need to send him down. It is something I wonder about. And when you see Gustafsson called up, it's a similar player type. Would it be the worst thing to scratch him and see what that looks like? Then give him another run. And you can be patient with doing it, but I do think it's a fair time to have the conversation.
Yeah, I think for any player this age, having a night in the press box just to reset isn't the end of the world. I think there's value to that, even if it's just for someone going through the grind of an 82-game season for the first time, just like, hey, man, catch your breath, rest up, heal up, get everything right. And I could see some value to that to ASP. But I'm a long way away from saying he should be sent down yet. I'm not particularly close on that one. I think like that turnover that led to the breakaway, those are the type of plays I'm actually not worried about, man. Everybody catches an edge from time to time, and you eat shit at a bad moment. It happens a million times. The bad passes, the bad coverages, the mental mistakes are the ones where I'm really trying to nitpick on him because they're there, and for most rookies, they're gonna happen. But what in the heat of a playoff race, even though it's only November, do the pros outweigh the cons, and does the player outweigh the replacement? And I think with ASP at this point, those are both still in his favor. He moves the puck more efficiently than most of the defensemen in this organization right now. He can quarterback a power play and do it very well. And again, I'm not saying those are things Gustafsson's bad at, but I don't think he's better at them than ASP, and he comes with a lot of the same mistakes. Will they be as frequent? Probably not. Probably be very comparable, and in terms of how often they happen, probably in his favor, but I just don't think the upside is there. So is the good ASP's doing in my books outweighing the mistakes? I'm still at the point of yes. And do I feel more comfortable with ASP in the lineup over, for this argument, we'll go Gustafsson, Hall, or Hamonic? Yeah, I still feel more comfortable understanding those mistakes are going to happen. So and again, taking the playoff race out of it, eventually a player is going to get over these mistakes, and you have to suffer through them at some point with every rookie you're going to put in the lineup. Again, I want the team desperately to make the playoffs this year, but the sooner you take that pill, the more it's going to help you in the long run.
I don't necessarily disagree. Let me just contrast one thing, though, is that we were having a similar conversation about Gustafsson at this time a year ago. He was the new signing, and he was making some mistakes. And it wasn't that any of us were surprised to see those mistakes. We knew that's the kind of player it was. It was that there wasn't really much offensive payoff coming the other direction. That's still true of Sandin-Pellikka right now. And he's had some good moments for sure. He's up on power play 1. I think you want to give him a little more run there to get comfortable, to see what he can do there. I'm not saying do this tomorrow, but I think it's a fair time to start having the watch conversation, because 6 points in 22 games is not really what you're expecting of him either. I think, you're willing to live with some mistakes that most puck-moving offensive defensemen make because they're making up for it with what they give you. And I think there have been nights that he definitely has made up for it. And I think there's probably been more nights that it's just kind of been, okay, it's learning for the sake of learning, which is valuable. I'm not even saying like learning for the sake of learning is not a valid use of time for a first round pick. Like this is a guy that you expect to be a huge part of your future. To your point, Brad, you got to eat it at some point. You might as well eat it now. And if you can be eating it and be in first place, it's kind of the best of both worlds. But that would be the devil's advocate case, is that like it's easier to live with the turnovers and stuff like that if there was a big reward coming offensively. Like that's kind of the Lane Hudson argument. It hasn't been at that level, obviously.
I think where I land ultimately is that if the Red Wings were like an 16 or 18 point team right now through 22 games, and they were like well out of it in an Eastern or Atlantic race that was, outpacing them, this would be a way easier decision. I would be happy with either the press box or a small stint in Grand Rapids as you need, because the criticisms are valid, but I think so is the kind of attribution to Sandin-Pellikka that even if you are not this right now, you will be this guy for us in the future. And I'll take that a step further to what Brad said, which is that you can see a world where he is that guy for Detroit in March and April. And you are not going to make the playoffs unless your second pair right shot D is a viable, better player than what the Red Wings have had in the past. And Sandin-Pellikka is the only representation of that they have right now. So it's not even just like the long-term vision that Brad was correct to point out. And again, Max, your point stands completely, and I fully agree with it. But it's not even just the long-term vision. It's also the medium term in terms of like if you are going to try to be something this season. And that runs counter to so much of what we've preached on this podcast, which is like, don't make long-term sacrifices for short-term gain. But at some point when you're on the precipice, which I mean, the Red Wings are leading the Atlantic right now, you can safely say you're on the precipice. You have to start to make, I don't want to say you have to make risky moves, but you make calculated decisions like this. So that's the only reason why I'm not like jumping at sending Sandin-Pellikka down. I do think you can do either the healthy scratch or the stint in Grand Rapids very safely here for short breaks, and it wouldn't torture season or his development, but that's probably why he's had such a long run here so far.
And I think to both of your guys' points, like I don't know what the best option is if it's not him at 2RD. It's probably Albert Johansson, but I don't know that Johansson necessarily had a loud, awesome. He did have a really huge play in that last game to draw a penalty. I think he had a pretty good game. But he's had some ups and downs this year too, right? Like I would not put Erik Gustafsson on the second defense pair. Like that's for sure. Like I think if it's not Sandin-Pellikka, it has to be Albert Johansson. But you can make a case that, I think Johansson's been a little better than Sandin-Pellikka, but I can definitely see the argument that in 10, 20, 30 games, right, at a certain point in your rookie year, you stop being kind of a rookie in that way, right? And the only way to get there is to play those games. So I think that's a big part of Brad's point, and I think it's a very good one.
And there's even one other alternative they haven't tried yet. We keep talking about who's going to be that second pair right D. It's ASP, it's ASP, it's ASP. And if they get to the point where, okay, it's just not working for him there, he's in over his head, you don't have to send him to the press box. You don't have to send him to the HL. Give him 13 minutes on the bottom pair. Put him with, JBD, Hamonic, Johansson, whoever the heck you want, and just give him super sheltered minutes, have him quarterback a power play, and see if that fixes anything. Does it solve the which of the slappies are you going to put on the second pair? No, because that's another big problem. But if you're focusing on the ASP of it all, that's an option that I can explore before going to the other two extremes.
But I do think Johansson could do that. Like if that's the route you want to take, it's an obvious move to elevate Albert Johansson onto the second pair, and then you play, either Bernard Docker or Hamonic with Sandin-Pellikka on the third. My only thing is that's a scenario where in the past you've seen the Red Wings say, well, no, if he's only going to play 13 minutes, we'd rather have him play 21, 22 in Grand Rapids. I don't know what's better for his confidence, because I think he's a player who confidence is really important for. Like when you need a swaggy puck, think about Shane Gostisbehere, right? When Shane Gostisbehere was feeling it, he was an animal. And when things had been going against Shane Gostisbehere, you were worried about it, and he kind of looked a little worried about it. And so I think that's part of the package with an offensive defenseman is to get them at their best, they got to have swagger, and to have swagger, they got to feel good about themselves. I don't know what's better or worse, playing on the third pair but still being in the NHL, or being the man in Grand Rapids and doing really cool stuff, but you're not in the NHL. So it's a legitimate discussion in my mind.
I think there's just way more levers that Steve Yzerman and Todd McLellan can push before, we get to the big red button and we send Axel Sandin-Pellikka down to GR. Like, maybe reduce his defensive zone starts. Like Brad said, maybe he plays a reduced role in the third line. Like, I think there's lots of opportunities and creative ways that they can, tell him very pointed things that he needs to work on. So I personally think Grand Rapids is beyond him. I think he needs to be playing with NHL level players. I think that's where he thrives the most. I just think there's lots of different things they can do before, we get the nuclear codes out and we go do something crazy.
There is going to be plenty more discussion on, Red Wings players and what to do with them, and especially involving Grand Rapids. But first, we're going to take a quick break to hear from the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast. Back after this. Let's be honest. Bad coffee should be worthy of a major penalty in a game misconduct. If you're still drinking burnt, stale stuff out of a giant plastic tub, I'm telling you it's time to upgrade. Coffee Cult, that's the real deal. They roast only the best of the best specialty-grade Arabica beans in the world. We are talking elite-level coffee. Every batch is roasted fresh after you order, so what shows up at your door hasn't been sitting around for weeks. Right now, the star of their show is the Holiday Blend, and it is unreal. It's a dark roast, 100% Arabica, using beans from Ethiopia and Guatemala. You get deep notes of baker's chocolate and brown sugar. It's warm, rich, and it's festive without being gimmicky. Whether you're gifting it or drinking it during a quiet morning by the tree, it just fits. Use code WWP at KOFFEEKULT.com to get 15% off. And for the rest of the month, if your order is $50 or more, they'll throw in a free Black Coffee Cult mug. Also, free US shipping on orders of $49 or more. If you need a gift, go grab the Coffee Cult loot box. You get a branded mug and a 12-ounce bag of mystery coffee, all boxed up and ready to go. It's a steal, it's fun, you get to try new coffee, and it's not another pair of socks. That's coffeecults.com, code WWP. Go get the good stuff. You know how sometimes your game just feels off? You're doing everything right, but something's just missing. Hair loss can feel the same way. It's not just about what's on your head. It's about how you feel when you look in the mirror. Hims helps you get that confidence back with personalized care that actually fits your life. Hims provides access to licensed medical providers who can help you find what works for your hair loss, all through a simple online process you can do from home, so no long road trips or waiting room reviews required. You'll get access to proven ingredients that can help stop further hair loss and regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months if prescribed. There are no hidden fees or surprise costs, just real personalized care built around you. Think of Hims as your front office for confidence. They bring expert guidance, clear solutions, and treatments that help you get back to feeling like your old self again. For simple online access to personalized and affordable care for hair loss, ED, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/wingedwheel. That's hims.com/wingedwheel for your free online visit. hims.com/wingedwheel. Individual results may vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil finasteride. Featured products include compounded drug products which the FDA does not approve or verify for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. See website for full details, restrictions, and important safety information. Welcome back. Goaltending. Not the story we thought it would be to start the year. And it's a tale of two tapes right now. I mean, minus 1 or 2 of his worst games, Cam Talbot has actually been really, really good for the Red Wings. And John Gibson has not been. He's had a bad start to the year. I think he's had like a few really great periods. But other than that, again, what I said a few episodes ago and what everyone's been saying is at best, he just kind of goes with the flow of the game. And at worst, which is a lot of what we've been seeing, pucks are going in and he's not making the big save. And it's to the point where you don't blame him for what the team is doing in front of him, but you do have to start to observe the trend of the way this team plays with Cam Talbot versus John Gibson. Now, we are 22 games into the season. That doesn't mean this is going to be the entire year. Goalies come and go, and it's a very temperamental thing, but you have to call a spade a spade. And at this point, the Red Wings are winning in spite of goaltending for at least Gibson's starts, which begs the question, what do you do from here on out? And can you ignore what Sebastian Cossa is doing in Grand Rapids, where they have a historic start to their season? And a lot of that is, of course, to do with the guys in front of Cossa, but 167 goals against average and a 940 save percentage right now. And it's through 6 games, so it's not, every single game of Grand Rapids, but at the same time, he's playing well and the Red Wings want to change things up in net. You're obviously not going to jettison Gibson. That's not a question, but if you just carry 3 goalies for a game or 2, do you start to look at what Cossa can do for you here? So a couple big questions at hand.
I think this is a very fine line to walk because obviously to this point in the season, Cossa's earned a call-up. Again, that Grand Rapids team is a wagon. It's not like he's getting 100 shots a night, but you can only save the shots you see, and he's been doing it. Gibson, the most polite way I can put it is there haven't been a ton of goals that he's let in this year where I've been screaming, how the hell does that go in? Most of the goals that beat him were goals that should have beat him. But outside of that one period in Tampa, there hasn't been a game where it felt like he was saving anything out of the ordinary, where he was going to steal a game or give you a chance to win. It was just kind of, he might keep you in it. He might have an off night. If it's a tough save, he's not getting it. And you just kind of live with it. And with goalies, for the most lovable reasons possible, are basket cases. It's why they're goalies. They're the ones who stand in front of the 100-mile-an-hour slap shots for fun. If you bring up Cossa, you are sending a very clear message to one, if not both of the goalies. And in some instances, that could motivate them to get them going and be like, okay, message received, I got to get my ass in gear. Otherwise, this guy's going to take my job. Other guys, it could send them off the rails. This is the NHL. I've been on record dozens of times saying, don't coddle these guys. They're getting paid millions of dollars to handle tough situations. So if Gibson does not improve, I think a little bit of a kick in the ass would do him good. And I think bringing Cossa up for a game or two is a kick in the ass. Understanding, we just had the conversation about ASP. I don't think Cossa would come up and light the world on fire. He might have a good game. He might have a bad game. And unlike a second pair defenseman, if he has a bad game, that's probably a loss. But if he strings it together, perfect. Now you have an awkward decision to make with Talbot and Gibson, but if Kossa's so good it forces that decision, that's obviously a tremendous problem to have. But I think if the main reason, if you are bringing up Cossa, it's just for a few games. It's giving him a pat on the head and saying, good job, buddy. We're proud of you. Here's your reward. And it's giving a swift boot to the butt of the goaltending room going, we need more from you guys. Otherwise, he's coming back. So I don't know how everybody's going to walk that line, but it's there if they need it.
It is there if they need it. I don't think we're at that point yet. And I don't think we'll be at that point by New Year. Like, we are talking about 6 games. So as much as I'm here for rewarding good play, I'm not rewarding 6 games. Like, I'm rewarding couple months of it, right? And I don't think you can pull the chute on. I mean, I know you're not saying pull the chute, but I don't think you can go even down that road yet with Gibson just this early. I agree. I don't think he's been what I thought I was going to see from him, even in camp. Like, I was seeing saves from him, and I was going, oh, this is going to be a different goaltending situation than what they've had. And instead, it's looked a lot like what it has looked like in the tougher stretches of Alex Nedeljkovic or Alex Lyon, or I won't go quite as far as Ville Husso, because I thought when he was off, he was really off, and there were a lot of those, like, what was that kind of goals. I would say this. I agree, Brad, that there haven't been a lot of those with John Gibson. I do think that when you hear the way the players are talking about him, it's a lot of, like, we left him out to dry. Like, this was a tip. This was a 2-on-1. Like, that to me tells me they still believe in him. And so as much as you and I think a lot of fans are watching it and going, 870? Like, this is the big offseason acquisition? I think in that room, there's still a pretty good amount of belief that John Gibson is a better goalie than this. And maybe there's, you can build up some confidence, get on a roll. Like, he does feel like, similar to what we talked about with those puck-moving defensemen, I think a swaggy goalie is a terrifying thing, right? And I think you saw that with Ilya Sorokin for the Islanders, right? Like, when a goalie is on, that's when you know. And even in that game, which I didn't think he was particularly good in, there were saves in that game that were like, oh, well, where has this been? The problem was only one of them came before the game was like 3-0. Like, a bunch of them were on that 4-minute power play, and he was making a couple big saves, but the game's out of hand already by that point. There was one early. It was like a glove save in the first period, and it was like, okay, like, he's going to be locked in tonight. I don't think it ended up being the case, but I do get the sense that they still believe in him. I do think he's a guy you're going to have to give a fair amount of time to, just because of who he's been, what you have seen on tape of him and in person, obviously, and know he's capable of, but 2, because I don't think you're going to get better than that from Sebastian Cossa right now, no matter what the numbers in Grand Rapids say. Like, I think you'd ride the exact same roller coaster, and I think it's much more damaging to ride that roller coaster for a guy who does not have, like, a long legacy of success that he can mentally fall back on for confidence. So I came into the season saying I think you're going to see 8 to 10 Sebastian Cossa starts. I still think that, but I think they're going to come organically when there's an injury or something else, more so than trying to, like, carve out time or try to motivate necessarily. That'd be my way of looking at it.
I agree. And I know that's rich because I raised this, but ultimately I do think right now is premature. But the point that I think I agree with the most, Max, is that if this is persisting in the new year, I think that's when I personally would start to seriously look at this, because Brad's right and you're right. Like, it's a delicate line to walk, and you don't want to set things, careening out of control. And it's not just about confidence. It's about, if you're going to throw away points, you're in a playoff race right now, which is more than what we could have said about the Red Wings for a lot of the, recent seasons, actually the entire existence of this podcast. So yeah, it's early. And I think it's also notable that we're even having the conversation. The saving grace.
They need John Gibson.
Yes.
Cam Talbot at 38 years old cannot give you. I know Todd McLellan's given him 67 and 73 start seasons before, back when Gibson was 29, 30 years old. You're not doing that at 38. I think what's the high water mark for Talbot, that you would be comfortable with? 50 at the most? I think it might be more like 45.
I think 45 if you want to be good, knowing how, because he is not young, he's in the best shape of any goalie his age I've ever seen. His game's going to break down come February, March. So yeah, 45.
You guys
to
are
me
talking
is that.
regular season. If the Red Wings make the playoffs, they've got more games to play, and that's when you need Cam Talbot at his peak. Then you can't burn him out throughout the season just to make the playoffs to then get waxed.
So that's why you owe it to yourself to try to get Gibson right for a number of reasons, because he's the guy that you're going to want to turn to if you're in that position, right? You want to have John Gibson at your disposal. You got to, even more so than, I know Cossa's your future, but for this year, you got to invest a little bit in getting John Gibson right and give him every opportunity to get right. And I know it's frustrating. I will watch all these games. I see the same things you guys are seeing, but I think they need to give it as much of an honest effort as possible to solving some of the stuff that's his issue and some of the stuff that's not his issue, and just do whatever you can to make this conducive to his success, because they need him. There's no way around it.
And again, this is all in the box of this season and making the playoffs. And like Devin's point, going on a playoff run. There's also the contract. Gibson's under contract next year. Talbot is not. Gibson is the younger of the two. And the second this trade was made, every Red Wings fan, 1 year of Gibson and Talbot, and then Talbot's done, and then it's Gibson and Cossa. You can write it in pen. Everybody was dead set on that. So if you want that to happen, to Max's point, they got to do what they can to get Gibson right this year. And again, I think bringing Cossa up's the kick in the ass he's going to need. I agree with Max. I don't think we're close to that. But New Year's, if it's still happening, the message might have to be sent. And you might have to tell Gibson, buddy, this is your backup next year. We're going to see how he stacks up to you right now. And again, hopefully Talbot still is great for the rest of the year, and hopefully they can manage that workload. But again, next year, it's probably Gibson's crease.
You're going to need to see incremental improvements from John Gibson on the way to New Year's Day, because you can't keep having the same performances and expect to be a playoff team, and you can't expect to be riding Cam Talbot. I don't know if maybe you guys agree with this, maybe you guys disagree with this, but to me, it's John Gibson has to make the easy saves. I'm looking at his advanced stats right now. Him and Cam Talbot have almost the exact same high danger shots against, saves, and goals against. It's the easy ones that he's just not stopping right now. And I don't know how you fix that, because you should be stopping the easy ones. But, I don't think the problem is as ingrained or as deep as what we think. It's just he's got to make some easy saves and just play some, average level goaltending.
It's just some of the ones that get logged as a low danger or whatever. It's because it's from far away, but it's through a screen, or because it's from maybe the outside, but it's on a cross crease pass. So it's I get what you're saying though. These are not breakaways necessarily that you're talking about. But I do think there's some Red Wings element to this too, of if you're not going to clear your net, that puck is going to go in, even though it should be saved by where it was shot from. You know what I mean?
I mean, the same guys are clearing the same net in front of Cam Talbot as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, and then the secondary question is, are they? Is there a factor where, the Red Wings are more comfortable playing in front of one goalie versus another? I don't want to go so far as to say that is a certainty at this point, but
that is a real thing that happens in hockey.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's like all things, the answer is somewhere in the boring middle, where They probably do have a little bit more confidence just in this micro moment in time. And they are also not doing a good enough job of, clearing the front of the net or fully blocking lanes rather than allowing tip shots and deflections where the goal looks weak, but at the same time, even a small redirect, even if you need a Zapruder film to see where it's redirected, is still a redirected puck, So
couldn't it also work the other way though? I mean, like sometimes you see like one reason why goalies making their debut or whatever always seem to win is because teams play so hard because they're not necessarily that confident, right? So it's
like
I don't know what
David
always
Ayers.
make it
Like
right.
David
Yes,
Ayers.
exactly. Or from another perspective, like is it that the Red Wings, like I don't think the Red Wings are more comfortable necessarily in front of Cam Talbot than John Gibson, but I guarantee you Cam Talbot is more comfortable back there than John Gibson because he's played with them for a full year more than John Gibson has. So when you're making reads, when you're confident that you know what the guys in front of you are doing, how are you going to defend this rush? Okay, this guy's going to go there, so that means I need to be ready to push post to post or whatever, right? Like I guarantee you Cam Talbot is more comfortable with how all of that works in Detroit than John Gibson is because John Gibson's been here a month and a half. So there's elements to this, what you're saying. For sure, I wouldn't be so sure that it's like a confidence in John Gibson thing as much as it is confidence from John Gibson.
Well, where I ultimately fall in this is that goalies are voodoo, and whether or not you fully believe in that, I think just that what lies under the surface of that statement is they come and they go, and I don't think talented goalies lose their talent overnight. And you look at the factors that Max just described, he's only been here for a very, very, very short period of time. You have plenty of runway to work with. It's just, there's a heightened sensitivity this year because the games are mattering still and they're more impactful and everyone wants to see the success be sustained. So over 82, we said last episode, the Red Wings aren't going to be successful unless they have at least reasonable play from both goaltenders. If they're going to get there, that's going to have to be John Gibson coming up to form, but it's not mission impossible, but it is something you're keeping a close eye on. On a flip side of things, we talked last episode about Alex DeBrincat and his potential case for Team USA. And Max, I want to get your thoughts on it because he was asked and he said, I should be on that team. Scored the overtime goal, which I think put him on pace for nearly 40 goals or just under it, between 35 and 40 goals in the season. That's after not scoring for the first good chunk of games there. Do you think DeBrincat has a legit case, or is this too much of the same archetype vying for very few spots on Team USA?
Well, I do think he has a legit case, and it was a great article by Nick Kotsanika. That was like a one-on-one that Nick got with DeBrincat, so I wasn't in like a scrum or anything that I could pull from, but he did a great job with it. And the case that he has is that he's not necessarily the same archetype as all these other guys, because I think he is feistier. I think he is a little more tenacious. I think if you had to pick between him and Jason Robertson to play on your fourth line, yeah, I think Jason Robertson is an outstanding player. But I would trust DeBrincat in a fourth line deployment, which is strange because Robertson's 6'3" and DeBrincat's 5'8", but just play style wise, I think he translates a little more naturally to a grinding kind of role even than Robertson does. That's not the same thing as saying I think he has like a great chance because he wasn't invited to their orientation camp. And while that is not an end all be all, we may very well see Canada take a player or two who wasn't, invited and maybe even USA. But anyways, my point is it's not an end all be all. But I do think it tells you where their head was at, right? And they were looking at other players ahead of him. So maybe he's done enough. I think as of Saturday night or Saturday afternoon when I was leaving the arena, he was tied for 5th with Dylan Larkin in points by an American this year. That's a good sign. But I think the guys that you're going to have to overcome to win that spot are a different profile, to your point. Like you're probably not beating out Kyle Connor. You're maybe competing with Cole Caulfield, and I think the tenacity and all that, like that would be the case for DeBrincat. I think it's a real case. I just don't know how much that will translate to the result because it's an uphill battle, and we've seen how USA and Canada want to build their rosters. They only feel like they have room for a couple kind of scorer types. And if I'm DeBrincat, that's why I'm doing everything I can to show all the other ways I can factor in. Because I do think he'll go to a corner. I do think he'll make a hard back check. I know he can play around the net, even though he's 5'8". So that's the case. And we'll see if it's enough.
And it's also worth mentioning that if you look at the Four Nations American team and then you look at what DeBrincat's doing this year, you go, okay, well, there's definitely one or two guys there at least that he should definitely be ahead of at this point. And I would agree with that, but it's who else wasn't on that team. Do I think Cole Caulfield's goal scoring ability is so far beyond DeBrincat's that puts him on? No, I think the well-roundedness of DeBrincat's game, to Max's point, I would take DeBrincat over Caulfield, even if I think Caulfield's a slightly more gifted shooter. And then there's Tage Thompson, who after watching him live in Buffalo, it felt like a crime against hockey he wasn't on that Four Nations team. So I don't think there's any way they're keeping him off the Olympic team. And then you could go down the list, the Logan Coolies and a million other guys of the world, but he's got a big, big uphill battle. So I don't think it's impossible, but yeah, he can play on any of the four lines and you're comfortable with it. But if you're taking one guy off that fourth line and you're putting one guy that wasn't on the Four Nations team, and it's probably not him. And that's just the unfortunate reality of it.
I would call both Tage Thompson and Matthew Nyes like close to locks to make this team. Among as much of a lock as you can be as a guy who didn't make the Four Nations team a year ago, those are the two that I would say like those guys are on. And then it's this kind of battle between some of the others, and I think Brock Nelson's going to have a tougher time making it this year. JT Miller seems like a bubble case. I would think Vincent Trocheck is still on there. He's having a pretty good start, and obviously his coach is the head coach of Team USA. But like you said, there's a lot of guys contending. So I would put DeBrincat fully in that bubble conversation. Like, it's just, is there enough guys who are going to get from outside that bubble? Yeah, I think it's a great point, Brad.
I love the fact that DeBrincat has the confidence, though, where he's saying, I should be on that team. Like, that's the kind of swagger. We talk about swagger this episode. That's the kind of swagger you want from a guy who puts pucks in the net. And the fact that he's up to a 37, 38 goal pace after not scoring for 7, 8, however many games, that's what the Red Wings need from their best players. So at the very least, this is great for Detroit. But, biased though we may be, I think there is at least the case. So credit to Nick for that great piece.
I love the confidence of DeBrincat saying that, but there is a part of me that really wants one day just to see someone interviewing a player go, you think you can make the team? And then just go, God, no. Have you seen that roster? Why are you asking me?
That sounds like a Seth Jarvis quote.
Did you see the Morgan Geekie one today? I don't know what the exact quote was, but it was kind of like, there's a lot of pretty good guys on there.
That's a tough thing. Like, you can be having such a great season, but if you're like a Canadian centerman, you're like, okay, how are you going to make this team? Who are they going to take off? There's just no way you can do it. You're an American goal. You're Spencer Knight having a phenomenal start to the season. You're getting Hart consideration in early year polling. You weren't invited to orientation camp. You might be the third goalie. Like, it's really funny how these things work. Okay, let's jump into some NHL news, and there's just one very specific piece that I want to talk about here, which is Pavel Mintyukov out of Anaheim. Evidently wants to play somewhere where he's going to get more of an opportunity. He's kind of been boxed out. Anaheim has a lot of really young, really well-performing talent over there on their blue line. It's really transformed under Pat Verbeek, and Mintyukov just hasn't had the opportunity. Now, this isn't to say that Anaheim is guaranteed to trade him, but with this being reported, there's at least, half of the parties involved want to look for something else. Left shot defenseman, decent size. He's not small or anything. This could be a potentially really great get for the Red Wings in terms of what they need to bolster their top four defense from a dance partner who they've traded with very recently here. Is this an opportunity for Steve Yzerman?
Yes, I really like Pavel Mintyukov. I don't know. There is one other left shot defenseman who could be coming onto the trade market in the near future that I would be holding out for to know what's going on there before I wanted to pull the trigger. Don't know if we want to talk about that this episode or not, but Mintyukov is a really exciting young defenseman. 2 years ago, I thought like, oh, wow, this guy looks like a potential top pair type of defenseman. To your point, he's kind of gotten pushed down. He didn't have the best year last year. I don't know that he really stood out to me now that I think about it. And either time Detroit played Anaheim, I don't know if he was out of the lineup for either of those, but I can't say that actually he really popped for me. So maybe that's a little bit of a red flag. But I think there's a ton of tools there. Great skater, good size, real offense to his game. There's a little bit of that over-eagerness in his game that you have to tame, but I think you're always more willing to try to tame that than you are try to coax it out of somebody. So I'm a believer in this player. And so when I saw that, like, my antenna definitely went up. I would be inquiring for sure. But, I don't think if you're going to make a move for a left shot defenseman that you want to do anything before you know exactly what the deal with Quinn Hughes is.
You acquire Mintyukov to include him in the package for Quinn Hughes. That's
right.
what you do. But realistically, if I'm looking at this from Steve Yzerman's perspective, if I'm doing this deal, it's more based on what do I think the long-term projection of this team is and what's the ghost roster that I would want to build and plug players in. Because if your long-term future is we have to play Edvinsson and Seider together, I don't know if I trust a second pair of Mintyukov and ASP. I'm a bigger believer in ASP than Mintyukov. So in this scenario, then you're putting Mintyukov on the bottom pair with whoever. We call it JBD or Hamonic for this year, or Johansson places offside. Are you comfortable putting an offensive defenseman on the top pair with Seider? Because that would be the other option. And you split up Seider and Edvinsson. So if the super pair is the plan, then are you paying a premium for a bottom pair defenseman? If the long-term plan is you want to split up Seider and Edvinsson, is he a bottom pair guy, or do you trust him in the top pair role with Seider? I love the guy, but I don't know if I trust him in top pair minutes with Seider. And I don't think he's the type of defenseman that would thrive in that role. So I think it would be, again, you can't have too many good players. If you have a player of Mintyukov's caliber on your bottom pair, you're probably going to be a pretty good hockey team. But what are you giving up for that, for a guy to play that role? Comes down to, because obviously Verbeek's going to ask the world for him, and he should. I don't know if Detroit's the team best positioned to give up the world for him because of just the way they would likely use him.
Isn't the comp, though, for pricing purposes, David Jiricek? I don't think that was too expensive for anybody. It was like a mid to late first round pick and another prospect. Like, that's not out of the realm of like that to me is the most comparable situation to this. Similar draft range, similar draft class, actually, similar draft range. Mintyukov had proven more in the NHL by that time, but I think they'll want as close to full value as they can get for like a top 10 pick 3 years out of their class. But you're not getting Marco Kasper for Pavel Mintyukov, even if that may be where they want to start the conversation or something. My whole hang up on it for them would be like, I know how much they value hockey sense, and if there is to the extent there is a question on Mintyukov, that's probably what it is. And I think that speaks to your point, Brad. Like, if you don't trust him on a first pair with Mo Seider, then yeah, like I wouldn't want a Mintyukov Sandin-Pellikka second pair either. I would want like a Mintyukov with someone else who's like a defensive type on like an Ole Mata or whatever, but you don't have that guy. So it is a very valid point. Like, lineup construction wise, it may not be the right fit. I mean, and a guy that I thought they would like in the draft, Keishon Aitchison, they let pass by. And I think there's quite a bit of rhyme between Mintyukov and Keishon Aitchison. Aitchison may be a little more physical. Mintyukov may be a little more natural skill, but similar profiles. And they didn't take Aitchison. They obviously didn't draft Mintyukov in his year, so may not be their type. I don't know.
Anaheim also has had interest in the past in Anton Johansson, not Albert Johansson, Anton Johansson. And I mean, the Red Wings are going to look
similar type of player.
Yeah, right. And that's in Detroit's system. They don't have to give anything up for, and they really like him. Like, they really like his development. He's impressed a lot of people in and outside the organization, very obviously. So you guys are fair to bring that up. And to go back to the beginning, Max, you're right. Like, if Quinn Hughes is available, that you're pushing in all of your possible chips. And we're going to talk about that plenty, but I think if we're going to flirt with it, we have to at least dive into it a little bit this episode. That is the kind of trade return where you have to go astronomically beyond anything that seems reasonable or that you have a comp for, because guys like him don't come on the market. Like, that is a game-breaking player, a superstar in this league, a guy who's going to be a perennial Norris Trophy caliber player. You're going to give up something that is remarkably uncomfortable. And my thought behind it is, you don't not try. Of course you try, but I don't know that I'm necessarily sitting out of the market when other options come available, questions on Mintyukov aside, because it's like, when is that going to come to fruition? When is Vancouver going to make a move, if they are going to make a move? And then if you sit and wait for something that never comes, and then you had other opportunities pass by, and then the bidding war just goes far beyond what you're comfortable doing, well, then you don't want to be the only one not arming up in an arms race.
But aren't the Red Wings, I mean, who are the teams that have the system to make a more compelling offer for Quinn Hughes than the Detroit Red Wings right now? New Jersey can offer Simon Nemec, They can offer Anton Saleyev. They probably wouldn't do both, but I don't know. Maybe they would. It's Quinn Hughes. And obviously they have picks, but their picks aren't as high as Detroit's picks. Like, yeah, you're probably taking Nemec or Saleyev ahead of, I would start an offer with Sandin-Pellikka. And Vancouver, I'm sure, is going to want one of your young centers, not a deal breaker. They're going to want a first, not a deal breaker. Quinn Hughes is he 26? 26-year-old Norris winning defenseman. He's 2 years older than Moritz Seider, year and a half older than Moritz Seider. That pair would be the best pair in hockey. You would have to work pretty hard to scare me off of Quinn Hughes with an asking price. And the Red Wings, I think, it all depends if you think you can sign him, but I don't. He played at Michigan, family lived here, was at the program. I would have no reason to feel like you can't get into that bidding war and that you can't really compete in that bidding war.
Yeah, your conversation with Vancouver wouldn't be super stingy. It's like Larkin, Raymond, Seider, and then maybe you make a case for DeBrincat, Edvinsson, and you go, okay, these are the 5 players we are going to list right now. Pick out any 3 things you want in the organization beyond that. Anything. You want to go picks, prospects, players off the roster. Pick 3 and we'll throw in a sweetener, and that's the deal. And if they pick your top 3 prospects or your next 3 first-round picks or however they want to break that down, okay, done and done. And if you say 3 first-round picks for one guy, yeah, you give up a first-round pick for 6, 7, 8 years of Quinn Hughes.
This would be great for us. We wouldn't have to do 3 years of prospect profiles.
Yeah. Wouldn't scare me in the slightest. Like I said, there's certain players I would prefer not to put ASP in there. I would prefer not to put Danielson in there. But those are absolutely not deal breakers for me if we're talking about Quinn Hughes.
The Red Wings have prospects at premium positions that they took in the top 20 picks at every premium position. You want a D? You got Sandin-Pellikka. You want a center? They got a couple of those. You want a goalie? I'm not making Sebastian Cossa untouchable for Quinn Hughes. You want Trey Augustine? Same deal. I think Trey Augustine, very promising. It's Quinn Hughes. Like, pick 2 of them. Pick all 3, or you can have 2 in a first-round pick. Like, I'm not taking any of that off the table for Quinn Hughes.
And one thing to add in here, aside from being uniquely positioned to make this kind of offer, your point, Max, on this could be a fit also stands. I know New Jersey is the obvious landing spot because of Jack and Luke Hughes who play there, and obviously he wants to play with his brothers, but I've been told that that's not necessarily a certainty. And so if is doing a lot of heavy lifting here, but capital I, capital F, if Quinn Hughes is okay with just being in the Eastern Conference or in the Eastern time zone, and he's comfortable being somewhere where he has some roots or connections and doesn't have to be New Jersey, then that propels Detroit to the very top of the list or among the few teams who are there. What concerns me, though, is the amount of years he has left. Like, you would have to have a verbal conversation with him to say, hey, you are going to extend with us, because you can't trade him and then have an extension in place. He's not eligible for an extension until July 1st. So if you're making a trade sometime before the trade deadline or right at it, you would have to have the kind of verbal, secret wink understanding that, like, yeah, I am willing to stay in Detroit long term. If this is one of those things where he's like, I don't really want to make a decision until the end of 26, 27, then are you doing all of that for a year and a half of Quinn Hughes?
Not that much, but you're still willing to make the offer. And if you need to do what Carolina did, you do it. But no, you're right. You're not talking about Brad's like any 3 thing, which I fully agree with, by the way, like approach wise. Those are the same 5 guys I would try to take off the table. And then it's, name your 3 big assets that you want. Very rarely do you see a trade, by the way, get 3 A-grade assets. This is one of the few that would make sense for it. Like, Jack Eichel didn't get that much, but Jack Eichel had complications. Quinn Hughes doesn't have any complications besides the fact that he could become a free agent. So, yeah, if you feel like you have an assurance that he wants to sign, then you do it. And if you don't, then the price comes down because you assume he's telling that to anyone sans perhaps New Jersey. And then the market is down. But yeah, it's a good point, Ryan.
All right. There's going to be more Quinn Hughes conversation, no doubt, unless Vancouver turns things down.
Yeah, I don't know sorry if I stirred that up. It's just something that's in the back of my head. It's you see something on Twitter about it every day, basically. Some conversation out of the Vancouver market of Quinn Hughes. And when I see that, like Red Wings fans have been pining after Quinn Hughes basically since the day after that draft. Certainly within a year or two of that draft, it became the great what if. It's not about writing the what if. It's about being a perfect fit for this team.
Yeah, never feel bad about stirring up conversation that turns into really great content and near delusional manifestation of what the Red Wings team needs. That's what we do in this podcast. On that note, we're going to take another quick break, and when we're back, the final segment on this episode of the Wing Wheel Podcast, back after this.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingwheelpodcast. Again, if you want to support the show, the bonus episodes, the giveaways, the Discord, all of that and lots more, and you allow us to do everything that we do on the show and beyond. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Some questions from our patrons. The Jack Scientist says, hey guys, as a newbie to the minutia of hockey development, what needs to happen for players who are lighting it up in the AHL but are just not ready for the NHL yet? Is it a coaching, confidence, or waiting issue? I'm thinking of MBN, Danielson being slow-ish to adapt but go down and perform. I even feel ASP would be dominant in the A as well.
Usually in this scenario, AHL to NHL, it comes down to two things, and what's their biggest hurdle? Hockey IQ, because we've seen guys who, like, Chris Terry, who just annihilates the AHL his entire career, but never can stick in the NHL just because he doesn't have elite enough hockey IQ to stick at the higher level. Not always a whole hell of a lot you can do about that, but the most common one is just pace. Most of the guys in the AHL, like you look at, Lombardi, MBN, and with MBN specifically, this is what we kept talking with him is, you see the tools, you see the hockey IQ, you see he's trying to do all the right things. He just does them too slowly. And in the NHL, you don't get the same amount of time and space you get in the AHL. So you have to learn to make plays faster, whether that's actual speed or just time to make a decision. And I think once guys really start grasping that, that's when you see them start jumping and having success.
And the other element of that is obviously like athleticism. Like you get pace by hockey sense plus athleticism. You can't just be able. Taro Hirose thought it for sure, but he wasn't explosive enough to make it happen at the speed that he needed to, even though he was seeing it at the speed that he needed to. So that's the other big part of it. And it's why you see teams gravitate to athleticism, right? I think that's one of the best things Danielson has going for him is that it's not just that he's a cerebral player. It's that he's 6'1", pretty well built and fast. Like that matters. Even if he's not trying to play at the same speed Marco Kasper does, like because they're both big guys, they can get to what they need to get to when they need to get to it.
All right, next one here from Clint Benesh. He says, they say Svechnikov is unhappy with time and usage. Where would you be in on him in terms of a trade? Also, with American Thanksgiving happening this week, what's your favorite pie for dessert?
I would be in on Svechnikov. That's a yes. Obviously not at the Quinn Hughes price. I immediately don't have someone jumping to mind for a good comparable on that because I don't think Svechnikov's a point per game player consistently enough to make you super comfortable to give up the world for him, but I'd have him in the same tier that I've been coveting a Kyrou lately. Now, yeah, I don't know. I think you don't have the luxury to say no when players come up like this, and I do think you have to overpay to make it happen, especially considering he's a left shot winger, which is exactly what the Red Wings have been needing in their top six. So you guys can speculate on price, but I would give up a lot just to make it happen.
Correct me if I'm wrong too. Wasn't that report that that was something that was expressed, but tensions have kind of cooled? So it's probably not the most imminent thing. I agree. You're not going to not take that call. That's a call you're definitely taking, but I wouldn't go anywhere near the Hughes price and maybe go on one premium asset and something else or whatever. Pumpkin pie is the important answer.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I can't have too much of it. It's pretty rich, but it's so good.
If we're talking traditional, apple pie is always my go-to. If you find someone who makes a good peanut butter pie, though, that is S tier and nothing comes close.
What is peanut butter pie?
You've never had that? Okay. Unbelievable. The best food I've ever eaten in my life. You have to try it.
Peanut butter pie sounds like something they would send home with you, like for your pet when you went to the restaurant.
They saw Brad with a dog collar and a never mind. What I was about to say is not appropriate.
Yeah, don't let my dogs hear that. Peanut butter pie. It's not a pie, but apple pie doesn't always do it for me, but an apple crumble gets me there.
Yeah.
for sure. All right. Johnny Page says, can someone please explain Compher's usage? He brings little offense and very little else, according to Stuff Per 60, and is still deployed like he's a solid contributor that can center a line. What do you make of Compher's usage, especially his stint in the top six of late?
I thought he's been okay. I mean, I know this is a source of frustration for people. Like, I know he's not the offense that Marco Kasper was bringing the second half of last year. Clearly, I think that's the best outcome, is that Marco Kasper is your second line center now and going forward in perpetuity. I think it will get back to that. But they're clearly trying to work through some things with Kasper right now, and so they're going another route. I would have gone back to Andrew Kopp here because I really liked how he looked between those two. They're going with Compher, but I don't think Compher's played bad there. He gives some defensive conscience. He can play down low. I don't think he's a bad passer or anything like that. But I think you're looking for a guy who can get down low and let Kane and DeBrincat kind of cook on the perimeter. He gets to the net and creates some havoc, picks up some rebounds, finishes a play where he needs to, retrieves pucks. It's one of him, Kopp, or Kasper. I think obviously you're long term you want it to be Kasper. Short term I might prefer Kopp, but I don't think Compher's an unreasonable solution there. It's not like this that's like completely out of left field to me.
Yeah, the reason we're not harping on it more is like, what else are they meant to do? If Kasper's needs time on the wing and needs to kind of take the time to get things right, then it's going to be some kind of solution that's not ideal for your top six one way or another. And I do agree. Like, I don't like the line. I don't like having to use Compher in the top six, but this version of Compher is better than what we saw earlier this year, no matter how low that bar is. And I wouldn't even call it a silver lining. It's just one of those it is what it is things. Brendan Doyer says, longtime listener, first-time patron, stoked to finally join the Dub Club. Thank you so much, Brendan, for the support. It really means a lot. He says, my question, when do you predict our window for the Stanley Cup contention is, and who do you think from the roster is most likely to be the Conn Smythe winner?
We're in first place right now, baby. Let's go.
John Gibson, Conn Smythe.
Careful with the John Gibson hot takes, Seven. It gets you in trouble in this podcast.
So if you look realistically how the Red Wings are constructed, age, what their path to success is, I think we're 3 years out from, if everything goes right and your prospects hit and et cetera, the Red Wings being able to get into the playoffs and make some noise. And that's hopefully long enough that the Tampas and Floridas of the world feel a little more beatable than they have and look like they're going to be for the next couple of years. The Red Wings are never going to score the lights out. And if you look at, I know he didn't get the Conn Smythe, but St. Louis's cup run, they're not making that run without Pietrangelo doing what he did. I think if the Red Wings have everything come together like it should, that playoff run's probably coming on the back of Mo Seider. So I would say he's the most likely to get the Conn Smythe if it happens sooner than later.
I gave up trying to predict start and ends of windows because they're just going to tell you when it is. You're just going to see it one day and you're going to know that the window is open. I think Ottawa's kind of feeling like it's in that spot right now based on some of the reporting that's out there on them. I think Elliot Friedman reported something that they want to make a splash. Like, that's a team that I think looks at the state of the Eastern Conference. It's natural. We all look at that, there's not that wagon right now. It's Florida and Tampa still. It's Carolina is probably the team that's in the driver's seat for it. But based on how the start of the season has gone, if you're a team that like Ottawa that's been in the playoffs and that likes your makeup, you're not going to be afraid of anybody, and you're trying to take advantage of that. I don't think the Red Wings are in that place yet. Would it shock me if we were having that conversation a year from now, though? Wouldn't shock me.
I'd be stunned. Do you know how much would have to go right to, I wouldn't be stunned if the Red Wings won a playoff series next year. Cup contender, though, that would have to be accompanied by they got a Svechnikov,
you're right.
They got a Kyrou, but
they're different bars. I think when I'm thinking window, I'm thinking you're going beyond the first round. Any team that goes beyond the first round of the playoffs, I think, is in their window.
Yeah, you got a puncher's chance at that point.
Exactly. That's kind of what I mean. But I wouldn't call them Stanley Cup contender next year. But I think that's kind of the trying to point I'm making. Your window is a little bit longer than your peak, I guess. But maybe that's semantics.
All right, last one here is going to be a combo question. James Pridemore says, Max, this one is for you. Also love when you're on the show. From your perspective, do you think Yzerman will be buying or selling at the deadline when we consider that the Red Wings are where they are just before American Thanksgiving? And Shawnee Pat in the Hat says, hey, Max and dudes, from a tactical view, how do you think Steve should prioritize need as it relates to the teams who will be clear sellers? For transparency, I live in Nashville where it's shaping up to be an everything must go sale, but there are several other teams like Calgary, Vancouver, Washington maybe, who could have parts for sale. Thanks.
I still think that they're going to take a long view of whatever they do. I think if they're in Atlantic seed as you get around the trade deadline, which is a long way away right now. Like we've talked about it multiple times on this show, you could be out of the playoff picture after 3 losses right now with where the East looks like. But if they're still in like an Atlantic seed, I think that's where you really have the conversation of like, is it time to add something after what the dramatics were at the end of last year? I know Yzerman responded to those, but do you feel like that also might have kind of told him like, okay, maybe this team does need me to do something, even if it's kind of more of a gesture, a 5th round pick for a depth, whatever, to feel like you did something. Maybe there's an argument for that. Like, but I think that the kind of trades that you could really talk about him buying are still going to be ones that are not rentals. Like if you're talking about a guy with multiple years, a guy that's a young player, like that is still going to help you now. Like that's a buy trade, but they can still sell it to themselves and justify it to themselves with, but it wasn't just for one playoff run. Because until you see this team win a playoff series, I think a lot of this is true for a lot of fans too. Trade deadline's in early March. It's not like the front office is unaware of all the same March struggles that we all talk about all the time. They've seen it too. I'm sure they want to see that the team come through that as well before they throw good money after this group, right? So I think the easiest answer to that is if it's someone with term or someone that could be around a while, you're more likely to see it. I wouldn't expect them to sell if they're in a playoff spot. If they're out of a playoff spot, then that's a different question. Then you got Chiarot, you got Talbot, you got JVR. Those are all guys that are on expiring deals that teams will have interest in.
I think it's just a question of scale, assuming they are in a playoff spot at that point. As we talked about, if it's a Svechnikov, a Kyrou, Nashville goes fire sale, Philip Forsberg hits the market. You throw everything you have at those trades and Quinn Hughes. If they're in a playoff spot and those trades aren't materializing, I think, you take all your premium prospects and 1st round picks off the table and then go see what's the best rental you can get if the rental market's all that's available to you. If you want to give up a 4th round pick for a Lars Eller type, go nuts. Like we're at the point in the rebuild where 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round picks are not sacred. B-level prospects are not sacred. They have enough A-level prospects that they can fill out whatever they need to. If it keeps the room happy to Max's point, like you said, great, go do it.
All right. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Podcast. Thank you all so very much for tuning in. Thank you to Max Bultman of The Athletic Detroit, as always, for joining us on our monthly Good in the Room version of this podcast. And as always, go check out Max's work on The Athletic Detroit. We're going to link his latest piece in the description of this episode. To all of our sponsors, we cannot thank you enough. And to our Patreon supporters, we are immensely grateful for everything you do for the show. Patreon.com/wingedwheel podcast if you want to help us out. And if you want to go above and beyond, but Patreon's not for you, that is totally okay. Other ways you can help are by subscribing wherever you're getting this podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Tell a friend about the show, leave a rating, a review. All of that is a huge help to us. And to our name level supporters, you are the stars of the show. Arjun Shankar, Akefer, Martin Norberg, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Glenn Brabham, Rain Dano, Below Average Ball Hockey Goalie, Matthew M. Rice, Darb EQ, Sea Lion, Bingo Bango, Hassam Al-Qassem, Asher Killian, Kalen Wood, Alex Toger, that's what I appreciate about you, Derek Enstam, Matt McKay, Andy Hardcore, Sam Bankston, Citizen High Five, R.A., Aaron Hudson, Admiral Matt S. at the Cheesebag Navy, the El Cato, Stephen Ortlieb, Jonathan Miller, Give Blood Fight Probert, DJ Denton, Carl Butananowski, Jay Gollum, John Ingalls, CB55, Connor Scovey, Adam Zuiza, Adam Rose, I Miss Pew Suter, Steve R., Hockey Town Matt, Mr. Kuzi, Chaotic Monkey, Craig Kibble, Eyes Are Playing Stan, Podgy713, Clip Clop Nene, Now I Have to Learn How to Click on a Macintosh, Griffin Not from Grand Rapids, Marty, Cozy the OG13, Jeff Pridemore, Eric Hill, Butts Carlton, Best James Bond, Beer League Legend, Alec, Mark Hernandez, Slim Smitty Cards, Grand Rapids Girly, Anna Sleeman, William, Kip Tira Jr., Mike Asher, Chris Black, August, Brian Munn, Improved But Flawed, Chris 99 Jones, Putting on the Moritz, Trevor Centerfit, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, Quaz, Lonnie Zone, Dylan Larkin Trade Sacrifice, Antonio Gracias, Matt Keeler, Linda Hull, Connor Leighton, As Good as It Gobbles, Jeremiah Dobo, Josh Yelton, Brad Simmons, Darren Fick, Bex, The Hodag, Pumpkins on porches haven't even begun to rot and there are already perverts putting up Christmas lights. That's me, Reed. Commander Ben Barron of the Cheeseback Space Force, Sandin-Pellikka's Pet Pelican, Griffey Boy, JM Rhapsody, Frank Stanley, Rosie Posey, that other guy, the Hat 123, Pucking Puck, Carl Thames, Nerno, Stephen, A.A. Ron, Corey Prida, All Motor No Hands, Gene Sullivan, Roy Mudbutt, Big Cheese, James Pridemore, Upernadian, Drop the Puck, Eric Nance, Ann Stanislavski, Jim, Bellingham Massiballs, Wings Fan in St. Louis Scott, Johnny Page, Lucas Raymond, Cops, Gump Lip, Trent Thorough, Grepsky, Evan Beckner, Return of Jambo, C.E. Hayes, Finney to the Rafters, Jacob Marsh, Falkness, Fight Night at the Joe, Axel Sandin-Pellikka, The Octopi's Ninth Leg, Finney the Pooh, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. We will talk to you Thursday afternoon.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.
This message is brought to you by Greenlight Lending. Are you facing financial red lights on your home ownership journey? Don't have money for a down payment or closing costs? Struggling with your current mortgage payment or other debt obligations? Or maybe you have a complicated situation like credit challenges or self-employment income? At Greenlight Lending, they turn those red lights green with creative mortgage solutions for purchase and refinance loans. Their team crafts personalized plans with flexible closing cost options, competitive brokered rates, and innovative loan programs tailored to your needs. Whether it's finding the right loan or guiding you through the process, they're here to help you score your home ownership goals. Let's get you out of the penalty box and into the game. Head to gogreenlightlending.com to explore solutions or call Nick directly at 586-321-1888 for your customized plan. All loans are subject to credit approval, terms, and conditions. Rates and programs vary. Contact for details. Greenlight Lending, lighting the way to your financial future. NMLS 2676683, an equal housing opportunity lender, proud sponsor of the Winged Wheel Podcast.